Hi there, my name is Emily Sophia Hooper, and welcome to my creative midterm. Today I have sort of a comic I've drawn for you um, over the three questions given to answer for this midterm, also in a video format so I could easily explain what I drew and why I drew it in relation to the question. The first question on my emerging perspective on identity and inclusion. How has your understanding of identity, inclusion, and dis/ability evolved over the first 8 weeks? And use personal stories, class readings, or examples from your educational experience to illustrate your points. And I illustrated here through the reading Inclusion, Education, The Dilemma of Identity and Common Good by Francisca Felder. Um, for me, when I looked at the word inclusion, even since before I took any special education classes, it's always sort of a broad term, almost sort of a buzzword in a way, where you look at inclusion and you think, oh, yeah, simple, just include people. Include people in all of your activities, include people in school settings, social settings, work settings. It seems very simple, fairly simple. But one thing in this reading is that it defined two different types of inclusion. There's societal inclusion and communal inclusion. Societal inclusion are often backed up by rights protected by law. Most of the time that this is focused on education in the workplace. But communal inclusion focuses more on the social aspect of inclusion, and this isn't backed by any sort of rights that a person may have. This is completely on a person-to-person level, and as an educator, as a future teacher, there's no really real way you can enforce this. You can't force anyone to become friends or to include somebody. This is on a complete social level. So inclusion is really quite a complex spectrum that you have to look at from all of these sides. There are societal inclusions, which allow people the same equity within schools. Think of it as like disability resources or DEI, things like that. But communal inclusion is like friend groups and social settings. So, what can I as a teacher do for that? I saw inclusion as such a broad term, and because it's quite complex, they have something called shared social goals. As a teacher, because you can't force anyone to be friends with everybody, I want to aim to create a classroom that shares a common goal of empathy and inclusion as a choice rather than through force. What I mean by that is that you will come into the classroom and you will have this understanding and empathy to others that may be different from you and just share that common goal. For the second question, teacher identity and critical inclusion, I wrote a comic, I drew down a comic about something that one of my professors said earlier this semester, and this is one of my favorite professors, y'all. He often explains that we don't want to keep special education in this enclosed box, in this enclosed space. We don't want to keep people within special education in pull-out classrooms. We want to kind of integrate them into the gen ed space. And the question, what does it mean to be critically inclusive, is that I saw him saying this as we have to be active with our students, active in understanding them and creating relationships with them, understanding their needs through lawful means, through relationship means, and that how I would like to implement this in the future and shape my courseware is that through that active sort of teaching style for our students with special education to have this safe space. Is that one of our readings we talked a lot about our language that we use for students with special education. Like, you don't say, like, one big thing that's been hammered into my special education courses is that you don't say a dyslexic student, you say that student has dyslexia. And just small things like that is critical inclusion and very active inclusion that makes such a big difference in your day-to-day, um, education. So this really struck with me, how my professor said this. So it's also one of my favorite drawings I did for this assignment. I think I captured his essence really well in this. And for our second question, bias and privilege in education, how can educators address biases, both implicit and explicit, and privilege in the classroom? So I always believe that in the classroom, because it is going to be my own classroom, that it begins with me and ends with me. It starts with you, so it's up to me to become very self-aware. And one thing we've talked about in this class is self-reflection. Examine your own biases. We took our biases test. What did I do most of? Did I single anybody out? Did I call on anybody too much because of this, that, or another? Did I expect in more or less of anybody? And what can I do better as a teacher, as this figure in the class? What can I do better? Another thing you can do is seek guidance from peers, friends, family. I think those are all good people to take from, but mainly I'm thinking of peers within education or coworkers or other teachers, mentor teachers, seek guidance from people, and just truly be honest with yourself. Be like, maybe this privilege is affecting how I teach. Right now in my placements, I'm in a predominantly middle class white school, and I'm sitting here and I think, and I have conversations with my classmates where I'm like, could this be affecting the way I teach in the future, and how can this be different from another teaching experience I've had before? And what could I be missing and things like that. So I'm having these conversations with people and just truly seeking their guidance so that I can be the best of my ability to keep myself in check. And another thing that always begins with you is building lasting bonds with the students and truly understanding them and getting out of your own head about who they are without truly understanding them. Because to be able to teach a student with the full idea of inclusion in your mind is that you can't go about it in this way of almost like you're not going to see like that this student has a disability or that the student has this culture, is that this is an integral part of them, and that to be able to teach is to know them. So this is my midterm. These were my 3 or 4 drawings that I did. I'm very, very proud of them. And I think they encapsulated my true feelings with the questions very well. So thank you very much for listening and reading and looking at my art. And thank you so much.